If you're anything like me, you probably find a lot of meetings not super productive. They can be very slow and a bit of a waste of time, especially if you have way too many people in the meetings. However, there is such a thing as a productive meeting. In some cases, meetings can be the most effective way to move forward, particularly if we're talking about solving problems rather than having this email exchange that happens over days and days and people don't really fully understand the context. We can have a short discussion in real time and we can get it solved quickly. Similarly, for making decisions, it's important to have the context and to prepare beforehand and to do some reading. But when it comes to actually making the decision, having a conversation in real time, again, is often the most effective way to actually make a decision. And finally, building relationships. Having a meeting is definitely one of the best ways to do that. You can't really form close bonds over email, but you can over a video call or a face-to-face meeting. However, there are a lot of bad meetings as well. So we want to make an effort to make our meetings more effective because boring meetings suck. They're a waste of time. They're frustrating. However, doing it async isn't the solution. We do need to find a middle way where we can have a way to make decisions and solve problems quickly and have a way of building rapport. The secret to a good meeting is in the preparation. I've heard it said that if a meeting is an hour, you should probably spend an hour preparing for it if you're the facilitator. And if you are the facilitator, you need to facilitate, which means that you don't just let people talk about the weather for 15 minutes. You have a very clear agenda and you help people stick to it. If someone is monopolizing the discussion, you step in and gently bring the conversation back onto what it should have been. You don't want to have too many people in there. There can be a desire to not offend anyone by excluding them from meetings, but by doing that, you end up with people who haven't actually read the preparatory materials and they can ask irrelevant questions. They might be better off listening to a recording or just reading the minutes. Speaking of which, you do want to take minutes and you do want to document the action steps. In terms of preparation, one of the companies I worked at had this little almost value that if there's no agenda and someone invites you to a meeting, just don't show up. Because if they haven't spent the time to think about what is going to be discussed, it's highly unlikely to be a productive meeting. Similarly, with the preparation, it goes both ways, that it's not just on you, the person who is organizing the meeting. It behooves the attendees to actually read what is in the agenda, including background material. That will make the meeting much more effective. When you are having a discussion in a meeting, it's important, like I said before, to make sure that people who are highly opinionated and outspoken don't dominate the discussion. You might want to explicitly invite people to speak. And also remind them that it's okay if they have ideas that they want to contribute afterwards, that they can share that after the meeting, and that will also be included in any minutes. You might want to have strict time limits for each item in the agenda and be prepared to curtail discussion and move on when the time is up. Because you want to respect people's time. You don't want your meeting to bleed onto the next time slot. That's not a good look. The attendees don't need to be the entire population of your company. Not everyone needs to attend. It can be the case that someone listening to a recording may get as much out of the meeting as if they were there in person. In fact, I often prefer it that way because I'm able to watch back at 2x speed. If I'm not heavily involved in the discussion and I just want to understand the context, listening at 2x speed is a far more effective use of my time. In terms of documentation, you want to appoint a minute taker at the start of the meeting. It generally can't really be you because you can't facilitate and take notes at the same time. And just pointing something out, that there can be a tendency to have one person who gets stuck in the note taker role, which isn't really fair. And often that person might be female, which again is not fair. That might be an opportunity for you next time you're in a meeting to volunteer if you don't normally do that. The documentation from the meeting should have clear action steps, even better if the action steps directly go into whichever project management system your company uses. And you want them to be understandable enough that they can be shared with a wider audience. These days, if it's a virtual meeting, there's also a bunch of Zoom plugins which will do the note-taking automatically. It probably still does require some finessing afterwards to make sure that the key points are highlighted, but that can be a good step, especially if you can't find anyone to be a minute taker. Hope you enjoy your productive meetings.